What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, the D-backs take down the Brew Crew in game one of the postseason. So we got to do a little post-game podcast for you guys with our takeaways and our questions from game one of the postseason. We're going to all down on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked on Diamondbacks YouTube channel. Now, today's podcast will be a little bit different. I'm just going to ramble here for who knows how long. Check your feeds. I don't know what time you guys are listening to this podcast, but check your feeds. There should be a normal scheduled podcast in your feed, potentially at the time of you guys listening to this podcast. So check your feed. This is just the post-game podcast where I'm just going to ramble and give you my thoughts. We're not even going to do an ad read on this. There's not going to be any commercial breaks. We're just going to talk about game one and do a little preview for game two of this series, because the D-backs had themselves a fantastic game one of the series. They, of course, won 6-3 over the Brew Crew. There was some ups, there were some downs, a lot of emotion, but in the end, the D-backs were able to pull it out. So let's run through some takeaways and questions I have after the first game for the D-backs. First one, the answer backs are still here. The D-backs had their first 3-0 comeback in their franchise history. They've never made a comeback from 3 runs before in the postseason, I should say, in their franchise history. Not even like an insane margin, right? 3 runs is not something like it's not an insurmountable lead to come back on. D-backs have never done though in their franchise history. Did it tonight against the Brew Crew. We saw Corbin Burnes once again. We talked about it on the podcast previewing this series. Corbin Burnes, for some reason, has not been that good of a pitcher at home this season for Milwaukee. We saw 2 starts against Burnes this year, one at Chase Field, one in Milwaukee. Burnes dominated the D-backs in his start at Chase Field, but earlier this year gave up 7 earned runs at his 1 start against the D-backs in Milwaukee. Tonight, 3 home runs allowed by Corbin Burnes, 4 earned runs, not even able to finish 5 innings. Corbin Burnes got run out of this game. The D-backs offense, the answer backs, it wasn't something that I was sure would translate to the postseason. Of course, we had question marks about the lack of experience for the D-backs. Were they going to make some noise? The offense, was it going to travel? Was it going to travel to Milwaukee and wake up when it goes into this postseason, playoff atmosphere? This offense and this team has never had to be in a hostile environment like that before. Yes, they've played the Dodgers and the Phillies throughout this season, but these fan bases are just so much more rabid during the postseason. This D-backs offense has never experienced anything like that, but you wouldn't have known with how they played tonight. 3-0 comeback, largest in franchise history. Like I said, 3 home runs in this game. The Corbin Carrolls, the Ketel Martes went back-to-back in, the 3rd inning. Gabriel Moreno also had a home run. All 3 of those bombs absolutely crushed. When you look at the replay of the Corbin Carroll home run, he turns and shakes his head after crushing it. Ketel Marte, he knew immediately. He hits the ball, then he does his little sprint around the bases. And then Gabriel, he looks at the ball for a second. I mean, all these were crushed. A couple of them, I think the Moreno, the Corbin Carroll was second deck. These were absolutely crushed balls. I think the Moreno one was 105 off the bat for 425 feet. Absolutely crushed. Christian Walker late in the game, clutch in the 9th inning, 2-run shot. That was 112 off the bat. I mean, some of these balls that the D-backs hit in this game tonight just absolutely crushed. I have the exit velo pulled up here. That double, 112 for Christian Walker, the home run for Ketel Marte. I mean, the three hardest hit balls of the night. Number one, Christian Walker double in the ninth, 112. Number two, Ketel Marte home run, 108. Then number three was the Corbin Carroll home run, 106.9 miles an hour off the bat. The Ketel Marte home run, 444 feet. Just crushed that pitch. Gabriel Moreno, like I said, 105 off the bat, 425 feet. Like the D-backs were crushing the home run pitches that they got tonight. Gabriel Moreno, once again, I mean, whenever he's in the lineup, you got to see the success when he's in the lineup. D-backs, of course, have a way better record. You can see why with what he does on the offensive side, and still didn't really get to see the defensive Moreno too much tonight, but he's a weapon behind the plate as well. Perdomo, great at bats from him. You could really tell whether it was going to be a good offensive inning or not, depending on how Perdomo saw pitches, because I don't think any position player for the D-backs saw pitches better than Perdomo tonight. It felt like he was completely locked in. Maybe Corbin Carroll had the best game. Maybe Christian Walker had the most hits, but I thought Perdomo looked the most confident. I felt like this man never took like a check swing. He probably did, but it felt like he never took a check swing. It felt like he never flinched on pitches outside the strike zone. Felt like Perdomo was in complete command with every at bat he had, and he was a great tell for how the opposing pitcher was faring against the D-backs. So great job by Perdomo. Evan Longoria, he still got it. Defense made that great play, which you could make the argument saved the game and gave this D-backs the victory. It sounded like Torey Lovullo fought to keep Evan Longoria and get him on this playoff roster. I mean, how could you not want Evan Longoria on this roster? I know he's old. He's like 37, but there's not a man who has more postseason experience for the D-backs than Evan Longoria. This is someone that has had huge clutch hits in the past, leadership. I just want Evan Longoria on the bench in the dugout for the postseason. I'm going to need a little bit more from the Pham, the Gurriels, and the Alec Thomases of the world. Phams was striking out with runners in scoring position. Same with Alec Thomas. Gurriel didn't look that great at the plate either. Need more from those three. I mean, Alec Thomas was just getting overmatched with those high elevated fastballs. I mean, you just can't get overmatched like that repeatedly, especially when you know it's coming. So need more from those three. D-backs offense can still be better. 1 for 10 with runners in score position, which is kind of crazy. You put up 6 runs, you get 9 hits, and you're still only 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position. There was a couple times where the D-backs struggled with second and third and less than 2 outs. Need to come through in those situations. So still a lot to work on for this D-backs offense, despite them putting up 6 runs and almost double-digit hits. Now, that was just the first takeaway I had. The answer backs are still here. That was all part of my one takeaway. My second takeaway is this D-backs bullpen might be good, ? And a takeaway. This D-backs bullpen really came through and saved this game after Brandon Pfaadt left this game early because he was struggling. I mean, Mantiply, 0.2 innings pitched, no earned runs. Miguel Castro, 0.2 innings pitched, no earned runs. Ryan Nelson was the only guy who didn't look good today. 0.1 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed. I mean, if Ryan Thompson didn't come in and save the day for him, 1.2 innings pitched, no earned runs. Kevin Ginkel, 2 innings, no earned runs allowed, 4 strikeouts. And then, of course, Sewald gets a save. So this D-backs bullpen goes perfect after Brandon Pfaadt gets lifted from this game. Ryan Nelson is the only guy who went out there and just struggled, but thankfully the D-backs were able to pitch around him. Mantiply got fought. I almost forgot how to pronounce his name. Mantiply got fought out of his second and third 2-out jam in the third inning. That was huge by Mantiply. Did walk the first batter, I think we saw when Mantiply came out, but then immediately got the next out after that. Ryan Thompson got Ryan Nelson out of a huge bases loaded 1-out jam. I mean, the Evan Longoria, he gets him out because of the Evan Longoria play. Like, that was the entire game of the nutshell, or at least that was the biggest pivot play, right? The biggest nexus moment in this game. The biggest crossroad moment in this game, because if Evan Longoria doesn't make that play, 2 runs probably score for the Brewers, and then I don't know how the rest of that game goes. So Ryan Thompson, Evan Longoria absolutely came through in that bases loaded 1-out jam. Then Kevin Ginkel was just phenomenal tonight. I mean, struck out the side in the 8th, always brings that energy and passion, just looked completely dominant, was just out there throwing fastballs. I mean, got Jesse Winker booed because he just threw Winker fastballs after fastball. Once you knew Winker had that little, it seems like he might have hurt himself with his hip or something. Once you knew that was the case, like Kinkel was like, I'm just going to throw gas and just throw it right by him because Jesse Winker is an old man and can't even stay at the plate without getting hurt. Not even sure why Jesse Winker is on the playoff roster for the Brewers, but thank you, Brewers, for pinch hitting Jesse Winker. He's not good. So this bullpen was one of the strengths for the D-backs the final month of the season. Overall, the D-backs bullpen, I mean, throughout the season was probably like middle of the pack. Like I said on a podcast the other day, the D-backs finished 18th in Major League Baseball in terms of bullpen ERA. And like, I'm happy with that. Like I've said in the past, this D-backs bullpen just needs to be league average and this D-backs team will actually be solid. Look at them this year. The D-backs bullpen is 18th. It's literally league average. Now the D-backs have won at least one playoff game, the first game in the wild card round. We'll see if they're able to get through their wild card opponent. But so far, D-backs bullpen looking good. The D-backs overall looking good. D-backs bullpen in the month of September, 2.31 ERA. So ended the season very strong. We'll see. D-backs used a lot of relievers in game one, so definitely could use a Zac Gallen lengthy start in game two. We'll talk about Zac Gallen a little bit more later. Another takeaway that I want to discuss, Brandon Pfaadt just looked overmatched in this game one. Not too much of a surprise. He's looked overmatched throughout the majority of the season. Did heat up a little bit the final month, but 7 hits, just lived too much in the zone. It never felt like the Brewers hitters were off balance. It felt like they were locked in on every pitch that he threw. Felt like they were never fooled. A lot of hard contact given up by Brandon Pfaadt, even gave up a home run. So he's someone that I would like better at the back end of the rotation, of course, not starting in game one, but because of the D-backs' inability to clinch a postseason berth, Brandon Pfaadt had to start game one. Would have liked a little bit of a quicker leash for Brandon Pfaadt. Hopefully in the future, Torey Lovullo pulls him first sign of trouble, but we also need Pfaadt to at least go 4 innings. Can't have less than 3 innings pitch as your starter. Bullpen won't be able to survive the postseason if Pfaadt keeps giving us starts like that. So hopefully Pfaadt can bounce back in the future. Maybe you give Bryce Jarvis or Slade Coney a chance over Brandon Pfaadt. I'm not even sure if they're on the postseason roster as it currently stands. I don't think they are. I have the roster right here, actually. Bryce Jarvis is on the postseason roster. Slade Coney is not. So maybe next time instead of Pfaadt, you try to give Bryce Jarvis a chance in the rotation and see what he can do. And then the final takeaway that I had from game one is just be careful with your aggressiveness on the base pass. I know the D-backs strength this year, aggressiveness on the base pass, being chaotic with your runners, but we saw Carroll get thrown out at second. I'm always pro Carroll base running, so I'm not too mad about that one. Really the one in the ninth when you try to send Perdomo and Carroll on a double steal. Perdomo gets thrown out at third. Don't want to see too many outs made at third. If it's Carroll trying to steal third, Jake McCarthy, Alec Thomas, fine. Perdomo, he's quick, but he's not like a burner. So I don't think in the ninth inning I don't think in the ninth inning I want to see Perdomo attempting to steal bases. I think that's just not a smart move. If it was Corbin Carroll on second, Perdomo at first, and then you try and move the runners up, I would be okay with that. But Perdomo in the ninth inning in that situation, I think I would have rather you just kept your runners at home and then see what happens, because we did see eventually Christian Walker comes through with a big hit. But I think overall, I think this series will come down, this whole playoff run, I think it will come down to the micromanagement of Torey Lovullo. He's someone that in the past I've had just a lot of gripe with, someone that I think has just made a lot of questionable decisions. I thought he left Brandon Pfaadt game too long. Wasn't happy when I saw Ryan Nelson out there. But for the most part, very good report card for Torey Lovullo in game one. He pushed the right buttons. He started Evan Longoria. Bullpen was perfect. He even tried to pull shenanigans with the mound visit on Craig Counsell. So good report card from Torey Lovullo in game one, but he's someone that I'm keeping a close eye on for the rest of this series. And then game two tomorrow, going to have Zac Gallen versus Freddie Peralta. Gallen has faced the Brewers this season. He's faced the Brewers twice, 2 starts. Both of the starts, he goes at least 7 innings pitch. He's only allowed 1 earned run over the course of 2 starts, and 1 was at home, 1 was on the road. So Gallen this season, dominance against the Brew Crew. In his career, Zac Gallen, 6 earned runs over 17 innings pitched against Milwaukee, so hopefully he can keep it going. He did end the season with back-to-back really good starts. So Zac Gallen, who we did see struggle in the second half, at least ended the season very strong. And this is just going to be the perfect chance for people like me who are true Zac Gallen believers to just show that he's not just fool's gold. He's not just someone that D-backs fans hype up. To show that there was a reason he started the All-Star game in the first half. Let's see that guy. Let's see first half Zac Gallen. Let's see the guy who, if you're watching the YouTube stream, I have the Zac Gallen bobblehead for his 44 scoreless inning streak. Let's see that Zac Gallen, because in the second half of the season, we did not see that guy often. The postseason is where legends are made. We've seen guys like Clayton Kershaw struggle on the big stage. We've seen Justin Verlander struggle in the World Series. Hopefully, Zac Gallen is a guy who takes his game to another level when he makes it to the postseason, and he has a chance to clinch a D-backs postseason series in his very first D-backs postseason start. Very fun stuff for Zac Gallen there. Of course, Zac Gallen has been worse on the road than at home this year, so hopefully we don't see his road struggles come through in Game 2 against the Brew Crew. The Brewers, on one hand, have not fared well against Zac Gallen throughout his career. If you actually look at the Brewers lineup, the entire lineup, every position player on the Brewers, if you combine their walks and hits against Zac Gallen, it's 15 total. But how many times have they struck out against Zac Gallen in their career? The entire lineup, 20 times. So 15 combined hits plus walks, but have struck out 20 times. Zac Gallen has really owned this Brewers lineup. And for the Brewers, they're going to have Freddie Peralta on the mound, who is no slouch himself. Righty, hopefully with a righty. That does not mean Torey Lovullo starts Pavin Smith. So that's one of the things I'm going to be watching out for from a Torey Lovullo. Peralta has not made a start against the D-backs this season, but in his career, 16 career innings pitched against the D-backs, only 1 earned run. So another guy that has performed really well against the D-backs this season. Well, not this season, in his career. This season, though, of Freddie Peralta, not the same Freddie Peralta that we've seen in the past. Not great in high leverage moments or runners in scoring position this year. So the D-backs really need to create chaos on the base paths, but don't get over aggressive. And then also they need to attack early against Freddie Peralta, because his worst stats are the first time through the lineup. So hopefully you can attack Freddie Peralta early. His walk rate, not highest. His walk rate and his home run rate are both above his career average, while his strikeout rate is below his career average. So this is the most vulnerable Freddie Peralta that we've probably ever seen. He's performed really well against the D-backs in his career, but this season is not the same Freddie Peralta that we've seen from years past. And considering he hasn't faced the D-backs this year, this could be a great opportunity for the D-backs offense to jump on Freddie Peralta in Game 2, get to him early, and then hopefully Zac Gallen can shut down the D-backs lineup, or hopefully Zac Gallen can shut down the Brewers lineup, and then we see the D-backs headed to the NLDS.